Hi, friends. I'm AJ Smith, the Joy Weaver, and welcome to my podcast. Oh my goodness. I'm excited you're here today. I'm laughing because I had a client this morning. She sent me a message and she's like, "What do I do? What do I do when I just feel overwhelmed?" And so I told her some different tools and some different ideas. And then I was like, you know what? I should really make a cheat sheet because we forget what we learn and we forget the tools that we have at our disposal. Like we are smart human beings. We are capable. We are amazing. And sometimes we're like, what's my name? Where do I live? What's my phone number? If you're a military spouse like me, that question actually trips me up all the time. People are like, where do you live? And I'm like, or they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, well, right now I'm from, you know, but we forget the tools at our disposal because our bodies go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then we're like, I just feel stuck. And you are a fully capable human being. But all you can think of is, I should be doing something, but I don't know what. So what I'm doing for my one-on-one clients right now is I'm making this sheet. I just started 30 minutes ago and it's already 7 pages long. And I just started. So, but I was like, man, this would be such great tools to throw on the podcast as well for some of them, because sometimes we just need like those little reminders, those easy things that can reach for. Do you remember? Okay. So growing up, some of you may laugh because you might have grown up like me, where if you're when your body's in that half sleep, half awake mode, it's that paralysis, that sleep paralysis. And so I grew up thinking it was like demons trying to attack me, but also like that's also your body, like what is it? Your mind's awake, but your body started sleeping. So your neurons are firing differently. There's something scientifically happening that I remember reading. I was like, okay, so I wasn't about to get attacked. And like I also believe in spiritual warfare. So like I'm here for the both ends. So please don't at me about all the things because like, yes, spread your salt, plead the blood of Jesus, like guard your gates, protect your doors, and also like put out your offerings, right? Like do your whole 9 yards in whatever way feels good for you. But the point is, what they said in the article was to wiggle your pinky toe. And you might be thinking, yeah, but like I feel like I'm about to die or like, but I gotta move. No, no, you get out of it by wiggling your pinky toe or your pinky finger. Your pinky finger almost might even be too close. It's like the furthest, smallest thing you can do because then that allows movement to enter to more of your body and like up your legs. And then it's like, oh, okay, okay. Like, because sometimes it's like you can't even whisper, right? And so I tried that the next time it happened. And also, like, if you sleep on your back, like, the way that your breath is, it's different stuff. So usually if I sleep on my side or on my stomach, I don't have this issue. But if I sleep on my back, I'm like, and so I think we should come at this when we're in freeze, flight, fawn, foe. We're just, you know what I'm trying to say. That let's take the pinky toe approach to make it accessible. And I talked about this at the EduLARP conference, and I talk about this all the time about access points. Because we have this all or nothing mindset. If I can't flip around my attitude, which was on the Cultivating Joy episode, if you didn't listen to that yet, go for it because it's a great episode about how we get stuck in this all or nothing mindset. But the same thing can happen when we're confused or angry, or we're like, I'm just trying to connect. And we're like, but I should be having this ecstatic experience. And it's like, sure. But if we're angry, things that kind of allow us to kind of settle back in are super helpful. And also, sometimes we can't do the journaling if we're like ready to burn a building, right? Like if we're just like, where's my corn cup holders? Like we're expecting it's like expecting my preschoolers or my kindergartners to come in and work on math immediately after recess. It's not happening. They need transition time. Your body needs transition times. You are an adult toddler. Your nervous system is the same as a toddler's. Not really, but essentially. You need play. You need rest. You need food. You need hydration. When we ignore this, it is at your own peril. And you're like, why don't I feel good? The amount of times people come to me in sessions and say, I just feel off lately. And I'm like, oh, are we drinking water? Are we having food? Are we sleeping? They're like, well, no. my friend. You are not a robot. I love you. I love your enthusiasm. I love how hard y'all go after it. I really do. I am also Go Team Go. And I bought the burnout t-shirt and I don't want it for you. It's very itchy and scratchy. Don't. No. Go back. Like, sometimes I wish sometimes there was a way to plug into other people to experience what they've experienced so that we believe them. That you don't have to go until you crash. I was talking to somebody today and he was just like, I just want to make everybody else happy, make sure everybody else is okay. And he's like, I'm doing this extra work now. And he's like, but I feel off because I'm not working out. I'm not doing any of the things that I love. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your goal? What are you working towards? He's like, well, I'll be something when everybody's happy and everybody's successful and everybody's happy. And I'm like, cool. Where are you in this equation? He's like, well, I just want to make sure everybody else is okay. I want to take care of everybody else. I'm like, Okay, cool. Again, I ask, where are you also in this happy, successful? And like so often we put our dreams on everybody else and we're like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm fine. Are we? Are we? Hmm. Hmm. So if you're like, I am confused, I'm just feeling stuck, I'm overwhelmed, but like it should be cool. Let's scrap the should be. What is reality? What is reality? If reality is that we're feeling this, then like, okay, yeah, that does suck. Like, can we just say out loud, that sucks? Because so often we're like, I feel like this, but I shouldn't. Okay, but a part of you does feel like this. And like I've talked about parts work, all that jazz, that there's parts of ourselves, right? We got our big soul self. If you're like, AJ, I don't know what big soul self is. I think I talked about it previously, but if I didn't, let me know. We can talk about it. Your big soul self is in here, right? Your soul, your essence, your goodness. Because remember, your soul is good. This is important for what comes next. If your soul is good, then these parts that pop up that like we lash out or we hide or we disappear or we said something we regret or we got really weird and squirrely when we had to like do something, we made a mistake and then we didn't want to own up to it, the whole 9 yards, right? We can feel like those parts are bad if they're spoken out loud because we're like, but I don't totally believe that. But also, I feel betrayed because my friend did this thing and like, da da da. But we don't want to say it out loud because then we're like, well, my friend's not bad. I understand why she did it. Because another part is seeing, hey, my friend was trying her best, but she really dropped the ball on this, right? But like, also, I kind of dropped the ball on this. So I understand all the view, like, you're trying to hold court for all of it. But this one part that's just feeling betrayed and a sad little panda is just like, I'm just so tired and I just want to be heard. And we're like, no, shh, it's fine. Shh, it's fine. But if we literally just went, hey, what do you want to say? And it's like, ugh, I'm so upset because my friend sat with somebody else and then didn't call me and da da and then this other thing and then she left my message on red and then she didn't respond and then when I saw her next she acted like everything was fine but you just let her roll and then she's like and it just sucks and I'm just really sad. Yeah, that does suck. I can see why you would feel sad. Man, that's really hard. Ugh, chucking mud with you and you can feel that part of you in real time go, yeah, thanks. Like sometimes we literally just want to be heard. Half of my work in coaching is just listening and validating of like, yeah, that does suck. Because sometimes it just does suck. Sometimes things are just awesome and sometimes things just suck. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's both and. But what happens, we get confused when we're not allowing the different parts to speak up, when we're not allowing ourselves to say the quiet parts out loud, when we're just like, yeah, yeah, but it should be like this. But then you're like, you can't see me unless you're watching the YouTube video, but you're like tied up like this. And you're just like, yeah, yeah, but no, that can't go out there. We can't say that. We can't say that. And so you're holding everything in. And then somebody asks you a question and you explode everywhere. And then we're surprised. But then we're like, well, I didn't know how I felt until just now when it all came out because you asked me. But I mean, you got pushed. I like, I couldn't, how could I? Do you see how it like builds and builds? Like confusion comes from not allowing yourself to say how parts of you actually feel. Oh my God, that's a statement. Let's pause for effect. Drink some water. Damn, that's a spirit moment. Yep. Okay. So, welcome to my TED Talk. I mean, I guess that's why people have podcasts, right? Is to share helpful things. My goal is that in this podcast, you get tools to take away for your regular life, right? So, let's dive into it. What to do when you feel confused. Because when we're confused, we're not actually taking steps in any direction because we want to make sure they're the right step. Step this way for plan A, step this way for plan B. For step C, please turn around. Like, would that we could have it that clearly, right? And like sometimes people want 12 steps of their business plan. I'm telling you, as somebody who has been in business for 15 years and has pivoted, renamed her business, so many things, so many things. You don't know your 12th step. Like, yes, make your business plan, make your things more like guidelines and actual rules, right? Like it is a flow and a process. And but also sometimes we get so stuck on making a pretty picture of what it should look like and will look like that we don't actually get to the process of drawing, of actually doing the things. One option for confusion, like take a step, literally in any direction. Maybe not any direction, but like the amount of stress that would be relieved if you just chose. Melanie Allaire has a phrase. I know I've been quoting her a lot. It's because I've been listening to a lot of her stuff. But she's like, I make a choice and then I make it the right one. And I don't know if I totally agree with this because sometimes we make a choice and it was the most aligned choice, or maybe the choice that we could make in the moment, but maybe it wasn't the one we wish we would have taken, right? But then we can choose again. We can change. We can pivot. We can rotate. We can dance. You can dance if you want to. You can leave your friends behind or not. Take them with you. Do whatever you like, but take some freaking action. Do something. Because what happens? Okay, think of it like this way. Has anybody ever invited you to a restaurant and you're like, where do you want to go? TGI Fridays or Dairy Queen? I don't even know if TGI Fridays is even open. But if you're like, oh, I don't know, like either sounds good. What do you want? Oh, I don't know either. A quick way to do this, have somebody pick one, flip a coin. And if you feel disappointed by that answer, then go with the other one, right? Sometimes we don't know what we want until we start moving in the world. Oh, whoa, this doesn't actually feel good now that I'm walking in this direction. Sometimes action tells us more than planning ever could. Man, oh, that's a moment. Yes, okay. Action tells us more than planning could ever could sometimes. Sometimes we need to plan it out and be like, oh, okay, I need to prepare for XYZ, right? If you've listened to my curiosity meditation, you can send curiosity as a scout. It's in my book as well, Red Thread, Weaving Embodied Life of Joy. You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, and print. Thank goodness it was out of print for a year because publishing stuff, but take a step. Just take a step. And if you're like, oh, but I can't, cool. Come into Embodied Enjoy, my Facebook group, send a message to a friend, get some accountability, and try something, see what works. Because even if it doesn't work, that's information. It's information that you can use to be like, oh, I thought that would work because XYZ. I didn't realize that I would need, I don't know, a light bulb or a transformer. I blew out my vacuum because I thought that it was dual voltage. It was not. And I killed my vacuum. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take the action to plug it in. Granted, now my vacuum died. But like, I'm just saying that's really a really bad reference. But yeah, it's a terrible metaphor. I'm sorry. But like, okay. For example, when I started doing my energy work readings virtually, I remember the very first one I did. And I told my friends, and I was like, hey, I have this idea. I do this in person. I want to see if it translates virtually. Is anybody willing to try out? And a girl said yes. And she got on the call and she was in the car. And I was like, in my brain, I'm like, we can't do this while she's in the car. Like, this isn't, she's not in a cozy space. She's not set up for success. Like I was judging the situation. I was also judging what spirit could do. You'd be very amazed what spirit could do. Spirit's everywhere. Spirit will be like, oh, I'm in. Cool. Let's go. Like spirit's like your wild friend that's like, oh, I'm in. Cool. All spirit needs is an invitation. Anyways, Spirit showed up in the most powerful, potent way. Like it was amazing. Like my jaw was on the floor at the end of that session, and so was hers. Like we were both like, "Whoa!" Like that was potent. But I wouldn't have known if I didn't take the action. And there's other things I've tried in sessions that I'm like, oh, I don't really like that, or I don't like that, or like the way I've started a session or ended. And I'm like, okay, I like having a kind of a wrap up. What's your favorite part? What's your takeaway? How would you like to close? Do you want a blessing to wave, dance out? Like I like having those, but I didn't know until I tried it. Sometimes you just got to try it, right? Like recipes. One time we made a butterbeer recipe. Jared and I got all the things for it, and we tried like 20 different ways to make butterbeer. We found our favorite way. Just try it. It's okay. Your odds of dying, as Julia Wells will say, fairly low. Okay, number 2, go for a walk. I remember there was a lot of time on number 1, but I think sometimes we get so caught up in actions that we get frozen about taking an action. If an action feels too big, cut it down. How can you lower the stressor by like 10%? I think Christian, I can't remember his name. He was at the Deconstructing Faith Summit that Angela Harrington did in 2023, maybe. But he was like, lower the expectation, lower the bar by 10, 20, 30, 50%. How can you lower the stakes so that you can take the action? So if an action feels too big, okay, then like put on your big girl pants and be like, cool, we're not doing that. What's a babier version of that? What's a smaller version of that action that I want to take? Excuse me, cut it up into 5 smaller bits. What's the next one of that look like? Then do that, right? What do you need to support you to do that action? Sometimes you don't have enough capacity to do something because we haven't filled the well, which is a Julia Cameron reference from The Artist Way, which is such a great book. But basically, it's like sometimes we're not having enough soul nourishment, so we don't have any creative zest. We're like, I don't have any energy. What are you doing to fuel the well? Sure, you might be getting enough rest, but are you getting enough life? Are you living? Are you living? As my dad would say, like, are you happy? Are you like, what are you doing? Like live. How are you doing anything for fun or to explore? Are you reading any spicy books or writing a book or going in the forest or learning about anything? If not, and it's just serious all the time, do you see how that gets heavy really quick? We're not bringing any joy, any lightness. I talk about joy and lightness all the time, not just because it's fun, but because without it, it's hard to breathe. Joy is not a nice to have, it's a need to have if we're actually living. Otherwise, we're just surviving. And we can do that. But eventually, those rims, they get scrapey. And sometimes joy feels hard to find, which is why the second idea of going for a walk is a good one. Because on a walk, you're getting out in nature, you're breathing, you're just like, oh, okay. I had a teacher in college that was like, if you're struggling, it was like finals week, we're all dying, like we're all exhausted. She's like, go for a walk. If you're stuck, go for a walk. Just 20 minutes at a time or go for a walk, come back, don't think about anything. If you can, don't put any input. Don't put like, what do you call them? People sounds, the talking. Don't put the talking, the talking. Don't put the talking in your ears, like instrumental music. That's what the word I was looking for. This is what I get when I record podcasts in the evening, is put instrumental music on or just nothing. Because what happens, and the research around this is really cool too, is we actually don't have as much processing time as people back in the olden days in like the 1700s, 1600s, 15, whatever, they did because there was more downtime. We always have noise, radios, people, TV, music always on. And so sometimes we don't have time to let things click into place of awareness or settling because we're always putting in more input. There's not always that quiet processing time. That's why getting quiet is nice because it's like, oh, it's why sometimes when people sit down with me in a coaching session or henna or whatever, and they sit down and they're immediately like, oh, and I'm like, oh, hi. Because it's just like their whole selves is catching up to them. So going for a walk allows yourself to catch up to you like that flash. Shoom, we're in the present. So going for a walk is really nice. And then look for beauty, look for the goodness, find the birds, find the sounds or the woodpecker or the crunching of leaves or yeah, If you're near a forest like I am right now, there's a forest by my house, and going in every season has been so interesting. Like I'm getting to know the life cycle of nature around me and this land that I'm on. And I love it so much. And it started at cherry blossom season. I saw my first cherry blossom yesterday. And I was like, oh, they're here. They're here. And honestly, in everything in the world right now, it felt like a miracle. I was like, the cherry blossoms have bloomed. Okay, spring is here. We're going to be okay. Like cherry blossoms are only here for like 2, 3 weeks, sometimes only a week if there's a bad storm. Like I think it was 2 years ago. They were only here for like a week and a half or something because there was a big windstorm and all the blossoms left. And that was it. That was it. They were gone. And so going for a walk can bring our awareness to what's around us. And it allows your nervous system to reset. If we're walking, we're not running away from a bear, and your nervous system's like, oh, okay, I'm safe. We're walking. We're not sprinting. There's a difference. So much of this is a body game. We get so in our heads. Our current reality is so obsessed with logic and heads and knowledge and all this jazz. And then other people are like, it's all in the body, focus in the body. And it's like, guys, embodiment is the both and mind, body, spirit. You got to get it all online. Otherwise, it doesn't really count. Going on a walk gets us all there. And maybe you're still in your head a little bit, but you're going to feel your feet touch the ground. Maybe you feel the wind. I love when it's a kind of slightly windy day. I love putting my hand out just like you would in a car, but the wind touching it. And I just feel like, I think it was 6 years ago. I was in Mississippi. I remember I was on a walk and I felt the wind caress my face and I felt spirit speak. And it was like God, but it was one of the first times God spoke as she. And I was like crying or something. I was like, I don't even know. And she was like, I'm here. And I just started sobbing. And she's like, every time you feel the wind touch you, know that I am here. And ever since then, every time I feel the wind, I just go, hello. Like it's that nice. It's that reset. And maybe a walk won't feel that sacred for you, and that's okay. But a walk will allow you a processing time, nature time, breath time, reset time, thinking time. And if you're like, I can't have nothing in my ears, that's cool. Listen to whatever you want. Listen to a podcast or talk to a friend or call a friend or whatever. Because option 3 is talk to somebody. This could be me and be like, AJ, I would like to have a coaching call. Cool. Go to my website, thejoyweaver.com. It's all up there. You can book a time in person or virtually. You can call a friend. You can call a mentor. You can text somebody, you can have a chat. Like if you're like, I don't want to call anybody on the phone, cool, like send a voice memo or just text them. You can also, like, if you have a therapist, bring this to your therapist. Like this is just the idea of talking it out, because sometimes we need an outside perspective, like the constructs we build in our head, y'all. And I'll be the first one to admit, my husband, when I bring things to him and I'm like, okay, so this happened and then this happened, and he's like, did they really say that? I'm like, of course they did. And he's like, AJ. And I'm like, well, okay, they meant it. And he's like, okay, what did they actually say? And I was like, well, and he's like, did they say anything? And I'm like, well, and he's like, AJ. And I'm like, I know, but I feel like they meant. And he's like, okay, what actually happened? I'm like, well, I didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. But I felt like the energy was weird. And then I felt bad because I took longer to get my ID out at the checkout counter. And he's like, okay, you feel better now? I was like, yeah. Like sometimes we just need to be heard. And sometimes we need people to like put us in right size perspective, because sometimes we can make ourselves like really big and important when like nobody's thinking about us. And sometimes we can make ourselves really minuscule and tiny. And we're like, man, I totally sucked and I blew this. And then they're like, I literally don't remember you doing that. Like, what are you even talking about? And we're like, oh, I thought you were so. And they're like, no, totally fine. So like other people can put things in perspective for us, or something that's really helpful. Where did I learn this from? I think it's Brene Brown, but maybe not. And it's ask for what you need. And I use this all of the time. And I use this with my clients too. If you're in WhatsApp container, you'll vouch for this. Is like, hey, you can say whatever you'd like, but then ask for what you need. Do you want advice? Do you want reflections? Do you want coaching? Do you want like perspective? Do you like, what do you want? And so sometimes I'll go to Jarrett and I'm like, I just need to vent, or like I'm like, I need to be a petty Betty for a minute. He's like, I love petty Betty, AJ, give it to me. And I'm like, okay, so here's or I'm like, hey, I need your like logic brain on this because I'm too emotionally attached. And he's like, okay, cool. But or I I just need to vent. Can you just listen and tell me? And I'll tell him, I'm like, can you just say, AJ, I love you and I'm proud of you and go take a bath? And so he'll be like, yeah, I got you. And then he'll be like, I have thoughts. Are you ready? And I was like, no, save them for an hour. He's like, okay. And then later he'll come back and be like, are you ready for my thoughts now? And I'm like, I need them gently and like kind. And he's always kind of gentle. He's like, I've never like, he's like, I'm not going to lecture you. I was like, I know, but I'm just a sensitive soul. But if we ask for what we need, it makes it easier to receive it. And it allows the other person in advance to know how to listen, right? Where it's like your Christmas wish list of, hey, here's what I need so that they can meet you there. If you're like, I can't take advice right now. I'm super sensitive about this, but I just need to be heard and like told that I didn't totally screw this up. And if I did totally screw it up, just love on me real quick and we can have I totally screwed it up later, but I just, and they can be like, oh my gosh, totally. If they do think you screwed up, they could be like, man, that really sucks. I'm so sorry. That's a really hard situation. I see you. Man, what do you need right now? And you're like, I just need to be loved on. Yeah. Yeah. How are you tending to yourself? Right? Does that make sense? So talking to someone can help give perspective, advice, help. And sometimes literally just talking it out loud helps. And then you're like, oh, like there are so many times I'll talk to Jared and I'll solve it as I'm explaining the problem to him. And he's like, cool. Sounds like you got that solved. And I'm like, yep, thanks for listening. He's like, not a problem. Okay. So that was 3. Okay. Our 4th one. I love tool conversations. They're just the best. Okay. The 4th one is journal. I stutter because I was like journal / like word vomit. They're 2 different things. So stick with me here. Some people get really squirrely about journaling. And by some people, I mean a lot of people. If you're like, I love journaling, I love this for you. Good job. If you're one of the people who are squirrely about journaling and you're like, that's me, AJ. Why are you calling me out? It's because I know you. I work with you. I see you. I see this all the time. Here's what happens when people are like, oh, journaling. They either get flashbacks to childhood when people went through their journals or adulthood, or they're like, I haven't used any of my journals. And then I don't know what to write in them. And then I got to write the perfect thing in it. Next. Or they're like, oh, I got to be like, dear diary, today is the 13th day. Next. Or they're like, but I don't have the right pen. Next. Like, y'all are making journaling so complicated that you never actually journal and then you don't get any of the benefits. So here's what's up. We're trashing it all. You're getting whatever journal. Close your eyes. Pick. I don't care. Grab whatever pen. Doesn't matter. If you need a rip out paper, if you're like, I can't touch any of my journals because the bar's too high, access points. Remember, if it feels out of reach, lower the bar. I have like $1 things from like the grocery store. What do you call it? Yeah, the store. I've got sketchbooks and random stuff. I've got 5 different journals all around the house because I just word vomit. I just trash journal. Morning Pages is fabulous by Julie Cameron, Artist Way again. And that's like 3 pages in the morning that you like brain dump. And sometimes I do that. And honestly, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I journal at the end of the night. Sometimes I journal 1 pages. Sometimes I journal 5 pages. It depends. Would I like to do it every morning like clockwork, like I did for quite a long while? Yes, I would. Do I every day? Absolutely not, because I wake up early and I go to the gym, right? My access point is lower. Instead of doing it in the morning, and then I'm like, I never do it in the morning, and then I'm kicking myself all day because I didn't do my journaling in the morning. I do it at like 10 a.m. or I do it at night and I don't make it mean anything. So often when we get stuck, when we get confused, it's because we're putting story on things. We're making it mean something. No, Barbara, done with that. We do not need the story narration of how much you suck because you haven't done something the proper way. Next. Just, I want to dare you to, if you find yourself being like, oh, but I should do journaling like this, I want you literally to be in your most teenage bored voice. Just be like, next, thank you. Next, like, you got any opinions better than that? Next, okay, I'm going to write this down because AJ said to. Like, I need your like F it energy in this with the journaling. We need to not take ourselves so seriously, because when we take ourselves so seriously and then it means this, and that's because this trauma response is then this, and then this, and then the layers. And then I've got to sort through this with 5 years of therapy. Next, I mean, also therapy is really great. I love therapy. I've been in therapy, probably go back to therapy in Mississippi because we've got America to deal with. But when you get so heavy about it, It makes it impossible to move through. When you make things buildings instead of stepping stones, instead of things you need to work around, work through, it's like you need a whole construction crew versus like puddle jumpers. Like, does that make sense? So don't make it complicated. So when you journal, especially if you're journaling confusion, we are not fancy. Repeat after me. We are not getting fancy about it. We are not getting official about it. We are not. Stop, Barbara. No. If you don't know who Barbara is, Barbara's what I call my inner critic and what I just automatically call other people's inner critic, or people who are being skeptical about the work that I teach without actually trying it. So if you needed that context. So you're going to grab your journal or printer paper. I could care less. And set a timer, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, a whole page, and just write whatever is on your brain. Just brain dump. Put it on there. If you're like, I don't know what to write, cool, write that down. I don't know what to write. I'm here and I'm writing because I feel confused. Oh, and then write yourself a question. What do you feel confused about? Well, Chandra, I'm glad you asked. Today I'm feeling confused about. Write it out. Write all the things. Write run-on sentences. Who cares about grammar? If you've read my book, you know that I am a run-on sentence girl. The amount of sentences I had to create after I wrote the whole book, a lot. There's a lot of periods I had to replace with commas, no, vice versa. So like, just write it all. And the thing that happens, the magic here, two things, three things actually. But wait, there's more. Oh, I love it. I love journaling because the words stop moving in your brain. If you have a brain anything like me, I have a neurospicy brain, like a lot of people. And also, this world is just very loud. Journaling makes the words stop. When you journal your thoughts on paper, you can actually address them and be like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. Or do I actually think that? Is that actually what I think? Oh, I hadn't realized that. I am telling y'all the things that I have written down and then go, oh, like, ooh, what? Like, oh, I didn't realize I felt that way. Like completely surprised after I wrote it down that I wrote that and I was like, oh, whoa, okay. And then I'll usually write like, what else is here? Like I'll ask myself that question and then I'll just keep journaling. Like let it all out and then you can look back and read through it from that kind of observer, that like big soul self lens. Does that make sense? So journaling in that way is really helpful because it's just emptying the brain. Because remember, our brains are hoarders, our brains are holding on to everything, and our brains are wired to keep us safe. Brenda is wired to keep us safe. Barbara, I call her Brenda and Barbara. Like they're wired to keep us safe. So if we can keep this in mind when we're journaling, we're like washing our brain. Like it's like an energetic reset because you're just like flushing getting it all on paper so that there's more space in your brain. If you're like, I don't really believe that, that's cool. Just try it. Try it. Try it. And if it doesn't work, cool. Come back, report back. But I'm telling you, you set a timer for 5 minutes and you journal, you'll feel a little better. You might feel like heavier or like, ooh, there's a lot of stuff here, but you're going to feel clearer and a little bit cleaner. Does that make sense? Okay. I promise I will work on saying, does that make sense? Less. It's just usually when I'm teaching, I can see people and they nod or they give me the no, and then I know to elaborate or not. So that's why I say that. Okay, the other part of this, and you might hate me for this, but that's okay. Hear me out. When we write with our hands, scientifically proven, it does something different in our brains than when we're typing this. And I'm saying this as someone who cannot always write. Sometimes my hands freeze up to this day, which honestly freaks me out sometimes, if I'm being honest. Sometimes we can't always do the things, right? So we find our access point. Sometimes I cannot write with a pencil. If I had a big henna day or something like that, or I did a lot of computer work, that handwriting is not happening that day. So maybe if I've got some hand usage, I'll grab a marker and I'll journal with a fat marker and I'll just like scribble. Or I'll voice to text on my phone. Any emails I send, most texts, most things, it's all done dictation device. I don't type very much except for what I have to. Like I usually voice to text. So if you have to voice to text journal, cool. Or if you're like, hey, I want to type it out on my computer, that's fine too. But I'm just saying there is some magic to be had in handwriting the things. There's a connection between your hand moving and your brain that does something. The science says so. This is also why I was very grieved when I couldn't use my hands and my hands were in braces for 3 months. It's because I couldn't journal and I felt way more stuck and confused than I usually did because even though I was word vomiting, I was spring cleaning, I was doing these other tools, I couldn't journal like I usually did to get that same clarity. Something to it. Just trust me. Just try it for a week. Just try it for a week. See what happens. Report back. Put in the comments. Okay. The last tool. Yeah. Yeah. There's another tool, but that takes longer. It's called spring cleaning. It's by Mama Gina. It's in her book, School of Womanly Arts. Um, and she explains it and you kind of hold space. You get asked the same question for 7 minutes, but that's like it's a whole tool that needs a whole teaching. So we're not going to touch that today. But that's what I was going to say next. So if you're like, what were you going to say? That's what that was. So you can go research Mama Gina, Gena, spring cleaning. If you Google it, I'm sure something will pop up. Anyways, okay, word vomit. This is to yourself in a car. If you're like the journaling thing, it's not happening. Cool. Lower the bar. Just word vomit out loud. Sometimes we just gotta like verbally process. Like I'll just talk as I'm doing laundry, or actually, let me write that down. I need to do, I literally put the soap in and I went to go upstairs to get more laundry and put it in. I hadn't. But when you're word vomiting out loud, sometimes you're processing out loud and you're thinking, and you might say stuff that surprises you, which is why also if you're word vomiting, it's kind of nice to have a phone on you or something nearby that you can take notes because sometimes you might say something that surprises you and you're like, oh, I forgot about XYZ, like how I just did the laundry, right? I'm not that I'm word vomiting this podcast because I have this written out essentially in front of me in this tool sheet reference sheet that I made, but I am riffing on each one. I'm not reading it line by line. There's things I'm saying here that I've written down to put in the tool sheet because I was like, oh yeah, and XYZ. Does that make sense? So word vomit can help us make those connections, especially if you have a web brain like I do, where you see how things are connected and there's like, oh, because XYZ, that's why I'm feeling like that because, okay, that makes sense. If you're like, I'd feel weird doing this in public or in a car or by myself, go put your headphones in. People think you're on a phone or something like that, or be like, I'm working on a play and I'm working out the different characters. And be like, oh, okay. Because if you can feel your different parts speak up of like part that's feeling really anxious and the part that's like angry and the part that's excited, you can let each of them speak and just be like, okay, hey, anxiety, what's up? Or like, I have mixed feelings about calling something like anxiety or depression, unless that's something you deal with, because then it's like we're claiming that's a whole different conversation. But I'm just saying, be aware of the words you're using on yourself, right? Words have power of like, okay, this anxious part that's feeling anxious, right? Or this part that's feeling depressed. What's here? What do you want to hear? Does that make sense? The difference of that versus something that's like here and tangible. Again, everybody's experience is different. I'm just saying it might give you more space to address it, that you can grow or deal with it without it feeling like a big thing. So things to think about. I'm just like, yeah. Depression, anxiety, mental illness is real. And sometimes when we have these different feelings, taking the scale level down, pushing out, staying rooted and grounded, and like your soul is good, spirit has your back, to be like, hi, why is this heaviness here? What's going on? When we can identify it by texture, sensation, feeling in our body and what it's feeling like, it can allow us to have that conversation versus, okay, this is this big thing. Does that make more sense? So, yay, mental health, taking care of ourselves, all of that jazz. Take your meds, drink your water. I'm here for medicine and for our essential oils, like whole spectrum, right? We're not doing the either or situation. Okay, those are the big things. And the last thing I'm going to say is like, tune in. And sometimes when we're confused, this is hard. So that's why I'm not leading with this. But like, if you can lean back into spirit, if you have that skill, if you have that ability to tap in and tune in, if you've done taproot work with me of like, hey, like, what's your knowing? What's your like aligned goodness when you feel spirit, when you're like, oh, hi, that sacred space, right? If you can feel that, if you got that tangible memory that you can loop back into, just sit there. So often when we're confused, we're trying to like sort everything and problem solve. And like sometimes when we're confused, we just need to be held. We just need to be held. And if you can hold yourself and just be like, hey, yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot. You are good. You are kind. You are worthy of goodness. Like whatever words you want to speak over yourself, I often close my sessions with blessings because my clients ask for them. And there's this calm that comes over them as they receive a blessing, as they remember, like remember who they are and allow those words to sink over them. There's a clarity that comes from saying, these things can be hard, but my soul is good. I'm here on a reason and a purpose, not to save all the things, but don't get into that story. Just, I'm here on purpose. I'm not a mistake. I can do the next right thing. Maybe I need a nap or a snack. Right. Sometimes I tell people like, okay, maybe we need a snack, a snack or a nap or an orgasm, Jesus Hecate. Like we need something like, hey, here's our little laundry list of options, right? Halto, episode 2, because that can also lead to confusion and overwhelm and then reaching for unhealthy coping mechanisms. And that's a whole other episode about coping mechanisms and healthy, unhealthy, the spectrum. But be tender and gentle with yourselves, guys. This is a really, really loud world we're living in. If you're feeling confused, then just like literally put your hands up and say, okay, and say it out loud. I'm feeling confused and overwhelmed right now. What do I need? What do I need in this moment? Like, go preschool teacher on yourself. What do I need in this moment? Oh, I think I need a moment. I think I need to stretch. I'm telling you guys, if you want to stretch with me right now, if you can, if it's safe to, stretch. Just take 5 seconds, roll your neck. And you'll be like, oh, like I just did that. And I'm like, oh, that feels better. We don't realize how much we're holding in our bodies until sometimes we actually acknowledge how much we're holding in our bodies. And then we're like, oh, and then it's like everything's like, oh, it like expands. It's like a loaf of dough. It's just, right? It rises and we're like, oh, and sometimes you gotta like punch it down. Not in that way, but like you punch it so it can bake, so it gets clear. So like, okay, make it smaller. What's our small pieces that we can do? What's our pinky toe wiggling that we're going to do to be like, okay, hey, I see you. We can't solve all of this, but how can we make this more accessible, more doable for us? It's a little TLC moment, right? Okay. That was a lot of information I gave you. I hope it, you know what? No, I know that that was helpful for the people who needed to hear it. And I hope that it resonates in a way that you can let it land in the way that you need to. I appreciate you listening so much. If this was helpful for you, please tag a friend that you think would listen or send it to a friend or post it on your socials, things like that. Like that helps spread the word. Um, I'm just here for us having tools to be more embodied humans as we do this life together. There's a lot of information out there about how the right way to be human is. And I think it looks different for each person. And what works for me might be different for you, which is why I like giving multiple options, right? But you don't know what works for you until you practice it, until you try it out. And if you've got tips, if you're like, hey, you didn't mention XYZ, please send. I am like a fiend. One of my strengths finder is input. I'm like, it's input, teacher, and activator, like go figure. And optimism. I think optimism is the other one. But like, if you're like, oh, hey, this is a really cool resource about XYZ, or I'd love for you to share about X, whatever, send it my way, please, because we all grow together in this. We're all learning together. One of my favorite things about Red Tent is when we have our opening circle about, okay, what comes up for you around change? What comes up for you around dreams? What comes up for you around curiosity? And people share, and it's like, oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that before. We all are in this together. And so let's be tender and gentle with ourselves this week, as my friend Susie would say. And know that I love you and I'm proud of you. If nobody's told you that this week, like, good job. I see you doing the thing. I see you doing the next right step. And this week, How can we refine the way that we're showing up with ourselves with less guilt and less shame and more curiosity, more compassion, more pleasure, more, ooh, hello, more delight, more openness? Because if we take that lens of, oh, I bet, if you're like kind of hopping in observer mode, big soul self mode, I bet AJ's doing her best in this moment. Okay, if I can assume that, okay, what happened? Why is this all over the place? Oh, because she thought, da da. Like if you can almost like watch yourself in a play, scoot back a little bit and be like, what's going on in this situation? Oh, she's very tired. Oh, she forgot dinner. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, we need to go eat. Then it's like, okay, I need to go eat. I need to not touch my phone. Let's go grab a book. Da da. Does that make sense? So let me know how this is resonating with you. Send me a message on Facebook, The Joy Weaver on Instagram, Facebook, or email. But just go team go. Yeah. I want you to know that I see you doing the thing. I see you showing up, and it's just really cool. So sing your soul song. May you be blessed with what you know, blessed with what you do, blessed with where you go, blessed with what you say, and above all, be blessed with who you are because you are a gift to me and many others. Amen. Amen. So maybe. See you next week, friends.